All right, hello everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Rallying Together, Resources for Artists During COVID-19. My name is Elysian Kogelmeyer, and I am on the Artwork Archive team and a daughter of two artists and art educators. I am joined today by Carrie Cleveland of CERF Plus, one of our wonderful and expert partners.
Hi,
Carrie, you want to
everyone.
say hi?
Hello.
So we'll be tag teaming this webinar together. So myself from Denver, Colorado, and Carrie from Montpelier, Vermont. And so in the spirit of rallying together, we'll be taking questions at the end of this webinar. So you can post them throughout the presentation, and we ask that you post them in the Q&A box, which is different from the chat box in which you are all introducing yourselves. We probably won't get to everyone's question, to be honest, but we'll continue to do our best to address questions in our content posted on our Artwork Archive blog. And one quick note, I am recording this webinar, and I'll be sharing it on our blog and sharing the slides. That way you can revisit or share the content if you wish. So why are we hosting this webinar? Our current status quo is one of information overload, and that information is constantly changing. I was listening to the news today, and there were many new updates. The good news is that there is a lot of information and resources, demonstrating that we're all in this together, and there are supports quickly standing up to help. We're also hearing from artists all around the world on how they are being affected, and we want to help. We want to help make sense of all of this noise and provide actionable steps that you can do right now to strengthen your art business. So our webinar from 2 weeks ago that Artwork Archive did covered strategies for moving your business online. We covered relief funding and Artwork Archive tools briefly, but wanted to use this opportunity to dive deeper into that content and answer questions that have come up since. So what will we cover in this webinar? In the spirit of consolidating information, CERF Plus will report back on their national survey on the state of artists, and I'll be sharing some experiences that we've gathered from our own survey and outreach. Carrie will also speak to the CARES Act, as well as some tips for approaching emergency financial grants. I'll speak to ways you can strengthen your business with Artwork Archive tools, and then throughout the webinar, we'll be sharing resources for you all during this time. So Carrie, it's all you.
Great, thank you, Elysian. Again, my name is Carrie Cleveland. I'm the Education and Outreach Manager at CERF Plus, and I want to take a quick moment to introduce you all to our work, just in case you're not familiar with us and are just learning about us today during this webinar. So we're a national artist service organization that's dedicated to helping artists build strong and resilient careers, and we're focused on emergency readiness, response, and recovery. We aim to be the go-to organization for studio-based artists on readiness with information resources and education programs. We're also an advocate for the needs of artists, working with both the general emergency management community and the federal government to ensure that their programs include artists and other self-employed workers. And CERF Plus has, and our founding mission is, an emergency relief fund for artists working in craft disciplines facing career-threatening emergencies. And so now I want to talk about what CERF Plus has been doing in response to COVID-19, and I'll start with that survey that Elysian just cited. So next slide, please. So one of our first actions was to launch a national survey of studio-based artists. We knew that we were going to be heavily engaged in advocacy work at the federal level and wanted to be sure that we were truly reflecting artists' needs. Our survey ran for 2 weeks as the effects of COVID-19 on both our personal lives and our personal economies were still unfolding. And there was a tremendous response from 3,270 artists around the United States and territories. And if you were one of them, thank you so much for your willingness to be open and share your experience. And I'll now share out some of those findings. Next. So the first question that we asked people was, have you or do you expect to be impacted in any of the following ways as a direct or indirect result of COVID-19? And it probably won't come as a big surprise that the top 3 effects that people were either already experiencing or anticipating experiencing were show cancellations, the loss of direct sales, and the loss of revenue through gallery sales. The loss of access to studio wasn't cited as a big factor yet, but since I mentioned this survey ran for 2 weeks closing April 3rd, it was before a lot of states, for example, had enacted stay-at-home orders, so that is, so it wouldn't surprise me to learn that some of that information may have changed. And then you'll see that the fourth most common response was other, and so some of the specific things that people cited as the other ways that they were being impacted or were foreseeing being impacted were that classes and workshops that they usually taught were being canceled. Some artists have jobs outside of their creative practice, and those had either been suspended or they didn't have access to that work anymore. There were concerns around supply chains being interrupted. People were seeing public art projects being canceled. And then a number of artists talked about either being unable to access for financial reasons support around additional labor it takes to make their work, or just through stay-at-home orders. I'm thinking, for example, of glass artists where it takes a real team to make that work. And with social distancing, artists just don't have access to the staff that they normally would in order to complete their work. Next slide. The next questions that we asked about were the financial ramifications around COVID-19. We asked about what people were projecting as their immediate financial impact and then projecting out as their 3-month financial impact. And the answers that we got really reflected how much was still unknown. There were a number of respondents who said, I can't really project these numbers yet. There were a number of people who gave a range of what they were anticipating. For those respondents who were able to project out specific numbers, the average immediate loss was close to $7,000, and then the median was $3,000. And for the respondents who did project out what they anticipated their losses would be in 3 months, the average was over $18,000 and the median was $10,000. Next. And then the last questions that we asked weren't as data heavy, but really just asking artists if they'd be willing to share out some of what they're experiencing and what they're worried about coming down the road. The first of those was, what are your current needs for support at this time? And it doesn't come as any surprise that the resounding answer was cash, was money, that there was some real concern around being able to pay rent or mortgage. Another really common thread was getting support around being able to set up for or increasing online sales, as some of those regular in-person channels for making money and selling work were being canceled or being closed. And then another reality that I want to make sure to highlight, because I think it's true for a lot of artists, is that even for some who have the ability to sell their work online, have those channels established, their new day-to-day landscape involves taking care of the kids who are home and helping them with their homeschooling. So they need time and to get into their studio and make their work. Next. And when we asked about what future concerns were, a lot of those that I just cited as immediate concerns were reiterated. But in addition, artists talked about the concern with future shows and events being canceled, just the concern that we don't know how long this is going to last. A lot of people were responding before the CARES Act had been passed, and so there was concern about whether or not there would be financial or federal relief available. And then people were talking about how this might affect tourist-based economies. I was thinking in particular about a comment from an artist who cited being in Cape Cod, and they were really concerned about what the summer season, when they make a lot of their income, was going to be like. And then lastly on the survey, we asked, are you conducting your artistic practice differently, or do you anticipate doing things differently in response to COVID-19? And there were a lot of people who said that just in these initial days, they're still working to kind of wrap their head around everything that's changed and kind of clear up brain space to make those shifts. But for people who were starting that work, there was a lot of talk about pivoting to selling online and creating virtual shows or finding virtual shows in which to participate. People have gotten busy creating online classes to teach. Others are using this time to really work on building their inventory. Artists are networking with each other to build communities. And then one piece I saw come up a couple of times that I thought was really interesting. Several artists cited shifting from making large-scale work to smaller scale work, partly because it just makes shipping that much easier and it can lower cost, and it seemed like a more efficient way to conduct their work if they were shifting to moving online. And so the real takeaway, I think, from this was that artists were looking to quickly adapt and change course and apply the creativity that goes into their work to shifting how they conduct their career in response to COVID-19. Those are the big highlights. All right. Thanks, Licia.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you so much. I grew up in Gloucester, Massachusetts, so I understand that summer community and tourism being such a big impact. So it's really interesting that you shared that along with all those other great insights. When I heard of CERF's survey, I was really excited for you to be able to share it with our webinar participants. So thank you for consolidating and sharing out so wonderfully. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problems. And we here at Artwork Archive have also been hearing from artists about how COVID-19 has impacted their careers. Similar to what Carrie just shared, tales of closures and cancellations. But we're also hearing stories of creativity, resilience, and innovation, how you are all adjusting to these challenging times, whether that be moving workshops online, participating in virtual contests, creating temporary art studios in your home, making new works at a lower price point to cater to an online market, like Carrie also mentioned, or creating things of beauty for those in need. And I just want to take a moment and acknowledge how important artists and the creative process are to our world and society. There's a quote here in this slide that states the impact of creative expression on our world. When people have outlets to express themselves, they will experience less fear. And as the daughter of an art therapist, I believe deeply in the healing power of the arts. I want to say thank you for creating art that inspires, comforts, and gives hope during this challenging time. So thank you. Now, we're going to get to the meat and potatoes of this presentation. We touched upon federal relief in our earlier webinar, which I will also share at the end of this presentation. We have a link to it. But if you wanted to take a deeper dive, we wanted to take a deeper dive rather, and bring in our expert resource, our partner, CERF Plus. And so I'll hand it off now to Carrie.
Great, thank you. So I'm sure you've been engaged, many of you have been engaging with the CARES Act, which was passed nearly 2 weeks ago now. And what was really remarkable is that the provisions that were made available were made also available for self-employed workers and independent contractors. I'm sure many of you have experiences with unemployment, et cetera, where that's just often not the case. So that's really great news and can ease the financial strain. I want to also say that there is a link here that you can use when you get the slides to follow up on our page that summarizes all of this information. So just reiterating, like, don't feel like you have to remember all of this now. It is reiterated on our website. I also know that I have the tendency to speak quickly. So if you miss something, I will both try to slow down, but also know you can find it later. We also on that page have some additional information that you might want to think about in terms of seeing if you can get forbearances on mortgage payments, et cetera, to ease financial strain during the COVID-19 outbreak. But I'm going to run through the key pieces of the CARES Act, just with some basic information and some updates that I have from the past 2 weeks as this has been unfolding. Next. So the first piece, and the really huge one, is pandemic unemployment assistance. This is being delivered through the states. I just want to reiterate that even though it's part of the federal assistance, it's being administered through the states. And I know that this has been a little frustrating for people who have been undergoing this process because it's by state, it's different from state to state. I can report back that as of yesterday, 37 states are now set up to receive applications from independent contractors and self-employed workers. So be patient, be persistent, be tenacious. We are here with you. And if you're getting frustrated, I want you to know I have been hearing about these funds coming through, so don't lose heart. It is real, it is happening. And just some additional tips to keep in mind. Check in with your state unemployment office. Some, as they're finalizing their process, want you to apply immediately. So if you can go ahead, do it. Others want you to wait. And just be ready to provide tax records, possibly a Schedule C for the last year or two. Just know also that if you have low or zero net income, apply anyway. It's likely that you'll receive compensation based on 50% of the average payment in your state, plus the $600 per week that is the additional pandemic unemployment assistance. The base amount that $600 is being applied to does vary wildly from state to state. If you have episodic income, look at the advice from your office about how to characterize income. And if you do, I want to stress this piece, if you do get approved, you do recertify each week that you do still need it. It can be an online process or just a call in. Just keep that on your radar that it's not one and done. You do keep certifying that you need it. And then also a last piece is that if you're applying for payroll loans or other assistance to cover pay, be sure that you're not receiving unemployment and those funds, and in essence, no double dipping on assistance to cover your pay, your income. So be upfront about what you're applying for and ask questions. Next. The other piece that was considered in the CARE Act, the first of the two loans, was the economic injury disaster loans. I'm not going to spend much time here because I'm sure, as many of you know, this program has been suspended, and as talk of additional funding being made available is happening, I have not heard about these loans being revived. What I will say is that if you have applied, I have heard that this has been a little bit of a frustrating and opaque process in that the Small Business Administration hasn't been terribly communicative and that it's hard to check on your status. I did hear from someone at a different government agency that the SBA can be slow moving. So this particular avenue does require some patience. And I would, again, like the unemployment, encourage being persistent and trying to connect with officers through the SBA. So I do want to jump ahead next to the Paycheck Protection Program. I'm sure many of you heard last week that these funds dried up, and then some of you may have been following the news about companies like Ruth's Chris and Shake Shack, which got rather sizable loans that Shake Shack has now returned their $10 million. The good news is that it does sound like additional funding for this program is in the works. It sounds like there could be a deal even this afternoon for additional funding, which would include what I have heard is over $300 billion additional funds towards the Paycheck Protection Program. So if that's something you are worried that you may have missed the boat on, the good news is the boat might be sailing again, and you can hop on it. And so just some high notes on this program. The aim of this program is for small businesses to maintain payroll and other business expenses, and that all or part of the loan can be forgivable if you are able to keep employees on the payroll. In other words, if you use at least 75% of this loan towards payroll expenses. Yes, this is available towards sole proprietors and self-employed workers. This one, as opposed to the previous loan that's through the Small Business Administration, you apply through a bank. The bank must be a certified lender through the SBA. And some bigger banks do have dedicated SBA loan officers to help expedite. And I've heard from people who've been applying for this program, if you have a relationship with your bank, that's a really great place to start, that having that pre-existing relationship does help facilitate this loan. Right, and then I'm gonna hop ahead to the next slide. And I wanna make sure you all know about this resource because it's really helpful and it's only running through Friday. So last week and this week, Nina Oslu-Tunselli, who is the executive director of the Arts Action Fund through the Americans for the Arts, she's been holding daily office hours through Zoom, 11 a.m. through 12 p.m. Eastern. They're running through this Friday. Anyone can hop on these Zoom calls. I was on one that I think had 17 participants, and she's taking one-on-one questions about individual questions just about the CARES Act, your particular situation, if there's a particular speed bump you've been hitting or something that's been challenging as you've been trying to access relief through the CARES Act, she will take your specific question. She's not just giving out kind of, you know, bullet point information. I highly encourage you to take advantage of this resource if you have questions. And so again, there are going to be 3 more of these through this week, 11 to noon Eastern time, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. All right, thanks, Lisa.
Awesome, thank you. All right, so we at Artwork Archive have heard from artists going through this process that it's a little hard to prove that you deserve funding, and it's helpful to have documentation to prove your professionalism and art career. So we just want to take a moment here and show you how our online art inventory software can help you track revenue and expenses, print a history of your sales and income, etc., proving your professionalism. And if you're like me, you may have a lot of open tabs open on your computer and lots of documents running around. So you can use Artwork Archive to help you keep track of all of those applications, materials, especially in a feature that we have called My Docs, which is like a small Dropbox where you can keep documentation like resumes, bios, and artist statements. And so, yeah, so it's great and helpful to be able to prove that you're a professional. This is a new environment, a new normal, and a bizarre thing to perhaps do. And so we want to make it easy for you to pull together that information that shows that you deserve funding. So we have income and expense tracking so that you can provide a full financial statement. And like I said, you can quickly print a history of your sales and income from workshops, classes, etc. And in reference to the My Docs, you can store information like your artist statement, bio, press, the things that contribute positively to an application. You also have a record of your exhibitions easily retrievable. So exhibition tracking is usually used to keep track of upcoming and past exhibitions so that you know what has been submitted, accepted, awarded, etc. But now it's a tool to demonstrate how you've been affected by cancellations and closures. And your acceptances and awards show off your professionalism. We're also providing some further reading at the bottom. Again, we will share these slides out after the webinar so you have access to all of these links and all the documents that are linked within all these resources to help you out. Now we'll get into the dollar bills that we all care about so much. So I'll hand it back over to Carrie.
Great, thank you. I want to quickly share these tips. They came from Mark Grozier, who's one of the grant officers at the New York Foundation for the Arts, and he shared them in another talk we were both on a while ago, and I thought they were so helpful that I asked him if I could aggregate them and then share them out through the various channels that I'm participating in. And really, if there's any one of these that I hope sticks with you after this, it's really that first one around reading guidelines and qualifications. Not all grant programs are the same, but most are pretty clear about their eligibility and their requirements. So take the time to read through the information that's provided. And if this is the type of endeavor that's a source of overwhelm for you, see if you can enlist a buddy to help keep you on track, and maybe then you can do the same for them. That documentation that Elysium was just talking about, it goes a long way. It just helps the grant funders who are reviewing your application understand your career or your work as an artist. If you're applying because of canceled shows or loss of income, having that proof, that documentation really can go a long way. There's, whether it's an email from a show saying that it's being canceled or whatever record that you had. If it was a phone call, get someone to send you an email, for example. Records of past sales, and then for showing your professionalism, obviously the easiest way to quickly convey is through an updated resume or a website or a bio or statement, something that shows you're actively engaged in your work. Next slide.
Great.
And so I mentioned at the head of this webinar that CERF Plus's founding mission is an emergency relief fund for artists who work in craft disciplines. And so we have established a COVID-19 response fund dedicated to the specific pandemic. Our fund is around supporting artists who work in craft disciplines. And for us, craft disciplines are media such as glass, wood, fiber, metal, ceramic, etc., who are suffering severe health impacts from the coronavirus. And that's a $3,000 grant. And you access information through the Get Help link, which is in the home banner on our website, www.cerfplus.org. And just quickly, our process is we ask for an initial inquiry. We don't take a full application right off the bat, just because since we are focused on craft media, if you're outside of craft media, and we understand that maybe in your overwhelm, that portion of our eligibility slipped by you, we don't want you to take the time to fill out a full application if you're in a different media be outside of that. So initially, we just ask for images of work and a resume or description of career and a description of emergency. And then the full application process afterwards does ask for information from your taxes, some kind of documentation of your emergency, and you'll have the opportunity, if you like, to show more documents that illustrate your art career in addition to the information that you already submitted in the inquiry. Next slide. And then I want to talk quickly about some other resources that you can find through our website. So what's been really inspiring and motivating over the past several months is just how many new emergency relief funds have been created in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, whether it's from regional arts councils like here in Vermont, the Vermont Arts Council has a fund, to larger crowdsourced efforts that have taken a lot of hands to create those funds. Like there's a Seattle Artist Relief Fund that the writer Ijeoma Oluwa created and is continuing to replenish through GoFundMe. So we have been aggregating a collection of these resources on our website. Just to fill you in on what I'm doing afterwards, I have a window on my computer open with 50 tabs of different grants that I'm going to be reviewing and seeing if they're still open and whether or not I can share those out. So there are organizations like ours constantly doing the work of sifting through what's available and compiling it. There's also a group called Artists Thrive, and I've linked through it here so you'll have access to this list, that they're compiling grants available across media. Their list is over 130 right now, so that's a terrific resource. And then I want to make sure that you have heard about the Artist Relief Grant. It was announced a week and a half ago. It's a national emergency relief fund specific to COVID-19. It's for artists of all disciplines, and their grants of $5,000. Those are being rolled out in cycles. So, the application will be open monthly over the next, I think, 2 to 4 months. So that's something you can go back and look at. It wasn't all at once. And then quickly, I want to note for organizations that the National Endowment for the Arts in the CARES Act received $75 million, and 60% of that is going to be going back out in direct grants. Their first cycle opened April 10th. That's for organizations that have received funding previously from the NEA in the past 4 years. The next cycle for other organizations is going to open up in July. All right.
That's great. And continuing on the thread of resources, here's some more. As they come in, we have been also adding them to Artwork Archive, has a COVID-19 resource page, which is linked at the bottom. And one thing I want to note here is that a lot of the content so far that we have focused on has been about US opportunities, such as the CARES Act. But on our Artwork Archive COVID resource page, we also highlight resources for international artists as well. And the rest of the content that we'll quickly go over can be used anywhere in the world. So again, these slides will be distributed so you can link to these resources. And I highly encourage you checking out CERF's website because it is absolutely fabulous. And they're doing so much for the craft world. So thank you. So with that, we covered federal relief and funding. We're going to transition to some actionable ways you can strengthen your business, how you can control what you can control, a theme for us over here at Artwork Archive. So as we were mentioning, artists are innovating and looking for solutions during this time. We presented quite a few strategies in our earlier webinar, which if you missed, I'd highly recommend viewing the recording, which is on our blog. The link will be shown later. And we've gotten a lot of questions since that webinar from Artwork Archive users and just artists from all over about more ways to strengthen their business. So we thought we'd take a closer look, a theme of this webinar, into some of the tools that we have available here at Artwork Archive. So again, a lot of words, not so typical presentations, but we wanted to make sure that you guys had access to this afterwards in a document form to clearly outline everything. But I think to start off with, if you're not familiar with us, Artwork Archive is an online platform for artists to manage every detail of their career, from organizing inventory to invoicing clients and showcasing their portfolio. And as an artist, you need to be an entrepreneur, marketing professional, sales expert, inventory manager, and now a crisis manager or teacher, homeschooler. So our business tools can help with all those hats you need to wear, especially now. And when it comes to inventory management, we often hear that artists will get to it on a rainy day when there's downtime. Well, this is the rainy day people have always talked about, that we've been saying. We all did not imagine it to last this long. So without a show to install or art fairs to attend, you may have found yourself with some more downtime, unless you have a toddler like me running around the house. Organizing your business and inventory is yet another way to take full advantage of that downtime. So we've heard from a lot of artists that they're taking this time to photograph their works, get them cataloged, and track the other key aspects of their art business. And Carrie also mentioned this too in her survey results from CERF. So here are just a few suggestions that will not only help during this pandemic, but actions that can help you apply for relief grants or lost wage grants and beyond. So just read through some of these bullets. You can document artworks, contacts, and critical information. Keep track of what you have created, where it is, the price. Track past exhibitions, again, to prove the history of you as an art professional. Log income, which is helpful at all times, but also when needing to prove lost wages. Track expenses, helpful for taxes, tax season, which has been extended. Create contact lists, good for sending newsletter updates. And again, in our previous webinar, we spoke to how important it is to keep communicating outward and sharing with your potential buyers what is going on in your life, and to be open and honest and authentic. And to organize documents, so to create a toolkit of materials for applications and presentations for our current climate and for beyond, when hopefully we all can see a little bit of normalcy at the end of this and we continue with our work. So before COVID, I would joke with artists to break open a bottle of wine to make the inventory go, smoother. Well, fun fact, at the beginning of this month, online alcohol sales were up 243%. So cheers to Provenance and a good Pinot. Though it's in the middle of the day, so maybe a little bit later. And again, more reading to help you organize an inventory. All right. So just because you can't interact in person doesn't mean marketing stops. Marketing is connecting, and we are all looking for connections at this time. And online marketing can be your virtual handshake. So artists come to us to help inventory and catalog their artworks, but we also have a great toolkit of marketing tools. And here are a few ways that we have seen artists successfully market and sell artworks online before and during COVID-19. So when it comes to your website, now is a time to update and optimize your website. Your website is your gallery these days. So you'll want to show off your works in a professional way. And one of the advantages of having an Artwork Archive account is that your inventory can be synced to your website, keeping information current. So for instance, if you log a sale in your Artwork Archive account, it will be reflected on your website. So no double entry. We spend enough time, honestly, in front of a screen with all that Netflix binging TikTok video watching, Instagram story viewing. So we want to streamline everything so you can get off the screen and back in front of your easel or your potter's wheel. And now is the time to sell artwork online. We saw that in the earlier trends that I shared from Artwork Archive and also from the CERF Plus national survey results. It's a trend we've been seeing for a while now, selling online, but it's more important than ever with gallery and event closures. So again, in our earlier webinar, we recommended offering a new body of work at more accessible price points. Carrie also spoke to that. I've actually been very tempted by smaller works on Instagram. There's so many wonderful things that are coming out of this time. And so that's one thing that you can be doing. And we also here at Artwork Archive have features that can help you get work out into the world as we are sheltering in place. And I have linked to two of our most popular features. The public profile is a great way to showcase your artworks to a new audience. And private rooms are a curated collection of works that you can send to a potential buyer. You don't have to stand face to face to get your artworks out there. Lastly, you can create an online exhibition to get your work out into the world. We've seen artists use collections, a feature within Artwork Archive, to group works and share them as a cohesive display, a temporary online exhibition for these times. You can invite people to view, and people can purchase works as well from using the sales links that will direct to your e-commerce site. So I am a side note, I'm a yoga teacher also. And one of the things that we always encourage our students to do in class is to let go of expectations, trust the process. And now is a time in which we have to do that, right? To adjust expectations and plans. No one saw COVID-19 coming, so your business plans for 2020 that you put into place in January most likely shifted. And our hope is that these tools will help you adjust your marketing tactics and succeed in this new virtual climate. So at this time, we would like to open the floor for questions for a few minutes. Carrie, is there anything that is jumping out to you that you would like?
I scanned through both the chat and the questions that have come in, and a lot of them are around the CARES Act and really specific questions around people's situation. I'm going to drop in the chat that link for the office hours, because I think that's just a really great way to get your specific question answered. Those office hours with Nina that are happening the next 3 days, I really encourage you to hop in on one of those, because she's sort of made herself the unofficial ombudsman between the CARES Act and the arts community. So she's great at the really detail specific questions.
Yeah, great. And then I see a question of where are online shows? So earlier, I did not speak to it directly, but there is a bullet and on our calls for entry page at Artwork Archive. So if you were to go to artworkarchive.com, we have a resources tab. And if you click onto that, we have a calls for entry page. And you can actually filter opportunities by online. There's a checkbox. So you can see if there's anything right now to apply to. And what's great is we are actually seeing organizations and opportunities still coming in during these times. So there are things to submit to and apply for. And so that was one question. Is there anything else that you'd like to answer, Carrie, on your end?
I know that there are a number of artists. There have been people commenting about how, it's never been easy to sell online. And so it's, it feels challenging now when the economy is kind of fraught. Where I've seen some success is some endeavors that sort of have the same theme as this webinar, where it's around rallying together. I don't know if people are familiar with the Artist Support Pledge. I've seen this hashtag popping up both through Facebook and Instagram. And it's this pledge where as artists sell a certain amount online, then they commit to buying an item from a fellow artist. So it's sort of that mutual aid, and as you're experiencing some success, share it with someone else. And I think that those sort of efforts that show people banding together, those actually they're a great way to engage people in what you're doing and pull them in and build some momentum around your online sales.
Yeah, great. And speaking of online sales, someone just wrote in and said, I've shifted to print on demand work. Do you have any thoughts on these? So when it comes to print on demand, we've been working with artists for over 10 years now, and we see artists using that as part of their art business. Another way to diversify offerings and revenue, and a way to create works at a more accessible price point. And accessible price point has really been kind of a buzz term throughout this time period. So we've seen a lot of artists, sticking to what they do best. So Katie Carey mentioned earlier in our earlier webinar, like you don't need to drop your works prices, your current portfolio, but now may be a time to create a cheaper offering in line, whether that be prints or print on demand, a way to help others patron you, right?
Right. I'm seeing a question coming through too about documenting something that never even happened, like classes you were going to teach. If you're thinking about it in terms of showing income that would have been happening, if there are classes you taught last year, if you can kind of show record of that, and then just by comparison, this isn't happening this year because of COVID-19, that's understandable, especially if it's around grant programs. If there's examples of past work that would have been happening now, that's really helpful.
And then I'm seeing a few questions, a lot of great questions coming up. And I mentioned this earlier in the webinar, we won't be able to get to everybody, and our hope is that we can continue to answer questions throughout blog posts. But a few that I can hit really quickly is that someone asked, can you elaborate more on the best way to sell online? So what I would say is actually, if you have time, we have about a 35-minute webinar that we hosted about 2 weeks ago, and that is published on our blog that you can view. We have some best practices when it comes to moving your business online and selling online, so that's a great place to get answers. Another question is that online exhibitions, do we keep all commissions? I would say that is dependent on what that online platform is. We here at Artwork Archive have a discovery platform, which you can see by going to artworkarchive.com. It's where all of our users who have public profiles, a feature that I mentioned earlier, your public profile is hosted on our discovery platform. It's a place where we also have organizations, art consultants, collectors using our tools. So they go there to look for art. They can search by type, size, price point, etc. And with the Artwork Archive's discovery platform, it's just part of your account. So we don't take a commission. We see it as a place to connect and to connect artists to potential buyers, and even more so important right now. And then another question that is relevant to Artwork Archive is, someone wants to use private rooms directly on a web page as a temporary show for Mother's Day. Oh yes, Mother's Day is coming up. I'm a new mom and I completely forgot. It's just like the time warp that we're living in, right? Yeah, so I mentioned collections, and I mentioned the public profile and private rooms. So if you have an Artwork Archive account, you can create a collection of works, say for Mother's Day as a theme, and you can, with our website embed, which was also linked in that slide, you can sync that to your website so that people have access to that. And you can also, if you have people in mind, you can create a private room that's absolutely lovely and send them directly to it. So again, that slide when I mentioned marketing has links. Again, if you also have questions, the next slide here is how you reach us. So Carrie, if you're cool with me moving forward into this slide, I'll touch upon this briefly.
Absolutely.
Cool. All right. So this is how you can reach us. So we, here at Artwork Archive, we have a blog. Our webinars are posted there, the recordings. We also have content not only around COVID, what to do right now, but also just content that's been around that we've been building up for over 10 years about how to market, sell, showcase your artworks. You can always contact us directly at info, and I'll let Carrie speak to connecting with CERF.
Great. So our website is www.cerfplus.org. The main heading banner on our website right now has links to all facets of our response to COVID-19, whether it's our compilations of resources, our information on the CARES Act, applying for help. You can get to everything there. Our email address is info@cerfplus.org. That is checked. It's not just a receptacle. It's not shooting info into the void. We do look at that and respond. So those are the great two quick ways to get in touch with us.
Yeah, and a good point about that. So we have had thousands of people viewing webinars and writing in, and so we are people. We are people answering inboxes and chat boxes on our website. Carrie mentioned persistence. Please reach out and touch base with us, but also we are doing our best to be persistent and answer everyone. So just a little grain of patience. And we just want to end the webinar with a little moment of artful zen. These are two things that I have seen come up from just, fun links during COVID around the arts, things that we will remember and look back upon and hopefully just give us a chuckle and a smile at this time. So the guinea pig and the man with toilet paper and Carrie and I say goodbye and thank you and best of luck with everything moving forward, everyone. We're all here. We wanted to make sure that we express that earnestly and genuinely for you all, and you are all making such an impact in this world now as always. So thank you.
And thanks, Elysian, for making this webinar possible.
Oh, absolutely. All right, bye everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.